So again, I'm Nathan Qualls, Director of Technical Services with New Water. Appreciate Alloway hosting tonight, and appreciate you all showing up, showing interest, and hopefully have some good questions and input on the facility plan that we're under development. So we've been spending, especially the last 3-4 months, reaching out to the public, reaching out to the village boards, the city governments, and speaking on this project that we're doing, because it's really important. It's yes, it costs a lot of money, and we'll talk about that. It's going to take a long time to certainly implement all these projects, but it's just absolutely vital to the ongoing success of this greater community. So appreciate it. We'll talk through this and then get to questions that you guys may have. It would be nice to introduce him and have him say a couple of words about the work that his firm does to support us through this planning effort. So Paul, if you we've got folks here in the room. We're getting underway on the discussion for the facility plan. If you want to introduce yourself and say a bit about the work we've been doing.
Sure, Nate, thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. I am Paul Boersma. I'm with Black & Veatch here in Milwaukee. We're a national wastewater consulting firm. I am both the project manager on this project for New Water, and I also have responsibilities for the water and wastewater work we do across the upper Midwest. We do a lot of facility plans across the Midwest, both for larger communities like Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Chicago, and a lot of communities the size of Green Bay, kind of 100, 200,000 person communities. I think this was a fairly typical facility planning process that we went through. And honestly, the results that we came up with are also, I think, fairly typical for what we are seeing with a lot of facility plans around the US. And that is water and wastewater utilities are needing to reinvest in their infrastructure to meet future demands that they're going to have. I think what you're seeing in the water and wastewater industry is parallel to what you are seeing in our national level on infrastructure. We've talked a lot about this as a country and our need to invest in infrastructure over the past year. We've seen that play out on a federal level, but it's certainly true within the wastewater industry as well. So Nate, thanks for a chance to introduce myself, and I'm happy to answer more questions if they come up.
All right, thanks, Paul. Appreciate you connecting and providing that kind of context to what they see across the nation. And so he's located in the Milwaukee office. So for efficiencies, we thought we would go ahead and include him virtually here today. For those of you not familiar with New Water, we are the brand of the Green Bay Metropolitan Sewerage District. We are a wholesale wastewater treatment provider, a public utility that serves the 15 municipalities in Northeast Wisconsin. Many of you residents of the village of Alloway, and of course Alloway being one of those municipalities that we serve. Here's an aerial view of the service area. The green shaded areas are sewered areas that flow to the Green Bay facility, and then the orange are sewered areas that go to our De Pere wastewater treatment facility. We've been serving this community since 1931. And we do so around the clock, 24/7, 365 at these two facilities, so that you all can run your businesses, do your laundry, use the restroom whenever needed. In 2021, we treated 14 billion gallons of wastewater between the two facilities. In addition to the two treatment facilities, we do own 78 miles of interceptor pipes. It's kind of the big pipes that collect the wastewater across our region, and lift stations and pumps across that service area. This is an aerial view of the Green Bay facility, which is located near Bay Beach Amusement Park. Kind of discharges out to the mouth of the bay, the Fox River and into the bay. The De Pere facility is located near Brown County Fairgrounds. And we do this protecting our most valuable resource, water. This is the vision for the organization that keeps us moving forward and advancing within our industry. New water is regulated by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. In 2021, we celebrated 19 straight years of 100% permit compliance at our Green Bay facility. That's something we are very proud of, and we try to do so efficiently and cost effectively. We feel that reliability, our service, reliable any day, important piece of supporting that economic development. As we take a look at a planning effort like this, we think about the expectations of, from our customers and from the residents. Supporting growth and economic vitality of our community is incredibly important. We do not want to become a barrier to growth. We may not be, I've heard Tom say this, we may not be the reason why people come to Green Bay, but we don't want to be the reason that they don't come. We are here to protect public health and the environment. We focus on 100% permit compliance. We have a permit with the DNR, as I mentioned, and as well we have an air permit for our facilities, and we focus on that 100% permit compliance. Providing reliable and cost-effective conveyance of wastewater is an expectation we feel you all have and our municipal customers have. So this facility plan was focused around the liquids wastewater treatment facilities, the De Pere facility and the Green Bay facility. Sometimes we talk about that being within the fence, sort of inside the fence aspects of our operations. And a few things about what it is and what it isn't. It is required by the Wisconsin DNR for new water to have performed facility planning, primarily around two aspects. One is to have to be able to obtain approval of our construction projects. They need to see that it's supported by a long-term planning effort. And then also to participate in the Clean Water Fund program, which provides subsidized loans to wastewater utilities like ours. So we get a good subsidized interest rate to be able to perform and fund those projects. What this doesn't do is it does not authorize any specific projects. It doesn't approve any budgets, any revenues or rates. That will still be done through our annual budgeting process and future commission action on those budgets and award of any publicly bid construction projects as we move through implementing this plan. It does project the revenue needs. It projects the particular projects we need and what funding and revenue needs it will take in order to implement them. So what's the process? What do we do when we talk about performing one of these facility plans? It starts with understanding the issues. What is the current wastewater flow rates and contaminant loadings to the two treatment facilities? What does that look like in the future? We work with Department of Administration growth projections for our region. We work with Brown County Planning to understand what the future demands of our wastewater treatment facilities are. We perform condition assessments and capacity assessments of those facilities to understand, can we move that much wastewater through the facility? Is this breaking down? Is this piece of equipment breaking down? Does it need investment to keep it reliably operating? So that's where we start, in understanding, taking a deep dive into our facilities. Then we begin developing solutions. How might we package these infrastructure projects to achieve the goal of meeting those future flows and loads taking a look at different solutions, maybe comparing alternatives. We could do a project that potentially replaces a whole headworks building, or can we fit within the existing building? We evaluate those alternatives across the gaps that we've identified. And then we work on building consensus. We prioritize those capital projects. We work with our internal teams. What's most important to you? What do we need to fix first? And then doing what we're doing now, communicating our findings. What are we learning about our facilities? What are we learning about the future funding needs? What are we learning? What's driving the investment? Primarily around these two issues: capacity and asset replacement. Aging infrastructure, kind of different way to say that, but our community is growing. It's about 0.75% per year on average, kind of historically. And as we look at the Department of Administration numbers on the projections moving forward, that's about what it looks like in the coming decades as well. So relatively steady growth as we move forward. On the capacity side, wet weather events are of significant concern. Some of us have had a conversation here tonight about peak flows that occur during wet weather, spring runoff. Sometimes you get rain onto snow. The wastewater flow rates at our facilities peak really high. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. Talked about aging infrastructure. Much of this mechanical equipment has been in operation for over 4 decades. We do a good job maintaining it, being able to keep it running for that long. But there does come a time that it needs reinvestment. Many of these projects have both capacity and asset replacement. So if we didn't have peak wet weather, if we didn't have a growing community, we would still need to invest in these facilities. They're still, the pumps are still 45 years old. So there's not really a do nothing option, right? As we look at these, and as we take a look at these projects and different approaches, we want to do so in an optimized way. Can we improve energy efficiency? Can we improve the water quality that we discharge? Can we recover more resources from the wastewater that is sent to us? On the regulatory side, we don't see, while all projects are connected to meeting our permit and our regulatory requirements, there's not a new regulatory driver that's necessarily pushing any one of these projects forward. There's not a new limit that's coming into effect yet. We are seeing some reductions in our suspended solids and phosphorus limits. And we just got a new permit in April that ratcheted down those permits. So we need to continue to improve that effluent quality and performance of the systems. So talked about wet weather. These are really bad days, not just for people trying to get home and having water in the streets and being rerouted and damage to their personal property because of flooding, but also these peak flow capacities that occur at our facility. In this community, we have separate sewers, right? A separate sewer system. So there's separate sewers for stormwater and there's separate sewers for sanitary wastewater. Despite that, we still get rainwater melt coming into our systems, and that comes in, it's called inflow and infiltration. Inflow being a fast sort of source of water, infiltration kind of happening slower as groundwater kind of seeps through the buried infrastructure. But this is a significant concern for our utility. As we look at that, we have at the 2 pump stations combined at the 2 wastewater treatment facilities, we have a rated capacity of 161 million gallons a day. It's about 120 at the Green Bay facility and about 40 at the De Pere facility. And these aren't theoretical numbers, these happened. We exceeded or basically met these capacities during some of those wet weather events in the past, and more conditions, more storms will continue to happen that produce results like this. So we need to improve that rated capacity of our facilities. Here's an example. This was back in March of 2015. it was December of 15 and March of 2019. And you see this is the flow rate at our De Pere facility, and you see it's climbing during snow melt, and then we got significant snow melt and rain on top of it. This red line is the rated capacity. So that's one pump out of service for maintenance. We can pump 40 million gallons a day. All pumps available, we can pump 50 million gallons a day. We were able to do that because we had all our equipment available, and it exceeded that rated capacity for like 18 hours, something like that. So these are significant events that we are not always prepared for, because equipment takes maintenance, and especially when that equipment is 40, 45 years old, breakdowns happen more often. It takes longer to rebuild this equipment. So this is a significant concern that this facility plan helped us identify solutions to address it. Generally, on aging infrastructure, here's an aerial view of the Green Bay facility. The blue was constructed in the and started up in the mid-1970s. We had some improvement in the 90s and recent improvement in the 2010s with our solids portion of our facility here. But this blue area is the primary area where this facility plan has identified a lot of gaps. Been in operation, now for many decades, since startup in the 70s. Similarly, at the De Pere facility, the De Pere in the blue was early 1980s. I think 82 it went kind of into service, and so there's a lot of infrastructure focused on a lot of aging infrastructure in those areas, and that pump station there as well. So on that aging infrastructure, this is kind of an example around that. This is what's called a primary clarifier, and this is at the Green Bay facility. So it's one of these four primary clarifiers. We have four of them. They're running 24/7, 365, unless there's a breakdown there. We always have one of these in service. And here's one that's taken out of service because we had a thinning metal and a failure of the support structure on the center column here of that clarifier. And we see similar condition and breakdowns across the primary clarifiers as well as the final clarifiers. The concrete's in decent shape, some stained and some rehabilitation that's needed, but this basin will continue to serve for decades in the future. But all this structural steel, the weirs here, the rotating equipment that sits it's a gritty, corrosive environment. It runs 24/7, 365. We need to begin to take these out of service, do a complete replacement of all these internal mechanisms. That's a pretty big piece of the investment across both facilities, is working on these clarifier projects. So just kind of wanted to run through one of those kind of for some context. What does that mean when it ages? The Green Bay facility, sort of a different look at the aerial view, in that these are the projects that we've identified to occur over the next 20 years and listed there. I won't kind of go through all the details, but we see it kind of across the liquids processes of the facilities. Got the pump station improvements to happen, and then the solids, the new solids facility, primarily taken care of with the improvements we did in the 2010s. But the focus of the projects here. Our website does have kind of a one-page summary for each of these projects that's identified. You can go there if you wish. There's a plan about our facility plan. You can learn more. Why the clarifiers? Why the aeration basins? And you can read through that. I'm happy afterwards to answer any questions related to that. Similarly, at the De Pere facility, one thing, it's a bit more capacity driven at the De Pere facility. We will be looking at adding most likely a fourth clarifier that's been identified as a future project, as well as an additional aeration basin. So that has some organic loading, some pollutant loadings that are increasing and starting to push the capacity there. So that has been identified as well as the aging infrastructure and the wet weather peak capacity. So not to forget about the pipes, right? We've got to be able to get the wastewater there. This particular project didn't really dive deep into the interceptors, but we know it's an important piece of the funding. So you'll see that we've included the cost in the the long-term outlook. We did a master plan for our, like a facility plan for our interceptors back in 2014 that did something similar. It identified, the next 20 years of projects on the interceptor side. We sort of blended, the facility, the wastewater treatment facilities planning with the interceptor planning to try to give a holistic look on what the future funding needs are for the utility. And the green is the pipes that, not the dashed green, but the solid green are the pipes that we own. You kind of see them, taking wastewater here from the village of Alloway and moving it to the Green Bay facility. Similarly, we have the surrounding communities, essentially bringing that wastewater to the two treatment facilities. The main conclusions from the facility plan, first and foremost, we wanted to take a look at whether the De Pere facility made sense to stay operational, or should we turn that into a pump station and just treat all of that wastewater at the Green Bay facility. That was a pretty easy capital decision as we started to take a look at some scenarios. It is much more cost effective to treat that wastewater at the De Pere facility and keep that operational. There is a need to invest in those treatment facilities, 245 to 370 million over the next 20 years. This is not one big project that cost this. This is that series of 2025 projects over the next 20 years. Additionally, mentioned the pipes, right? The interceptors that we own, that will take another 65 to 100 million dollars of improvements over the next 20 years as well. Those are really big numbers. They're hard to grasp. What does that mean? It takes over a long period of time. What does that mean to our municipal customers? In general, we are projecting 5.5% to 7% revenue increases each year for the next 10 years. That will fund those increasing capital needs that we've identified, as well as the operations and maintenance projections that we're making to operate the utility. Just briefly, how it breaks down between the facilities: 180 to 270 million at Green Bay, 65 to 100 at the De Pere facility. Bringing that total between the two treatment plants and the interceptors, 310 to 470 million dollars over that 20-year period. We've identified, as any facility plan will do, some things that should be on our radar. We don't believe they fall into that 20-year planning window, but what are some of the things that could happen? We make assumptions about how to plan, but what are some of the things that we may need to adapt for? Maybe a new nitrogen limit is required by the EPA or by the Department of Natural Resources. And so we've identified a project there. And so similarly, these aren't in that window of time. We don't believe they're not in those capital estimates, but we've done some planning and some thinking around how we might approach them if they do occur. We, of course, if they did occur, we would have to reprioritize, rethink about what order of projects needs to happen. And wanted to talk briefly about the tertiary filtration project at Green Bay. And we are able to keep this project outside of this 20-year planning window because of the work that we're doing out in agriculture primarily, and with urban stormwater in our adaptive management work. And that is regulatory flexibility that the Department of Natural Resource has given New Water and utilities like us to make TSF solids and phosphorus reductions out in the environment, out in agriculture, as well as stormwater, in order to get the water body into compliance. The Fox River is out of compliance for suspended solids and phosphorus. And this allows us to defer this big investment that we would need to make in tertiary filtration and we can get more environmental impact by working out in the watershed at a lower cost. So wanted to touch base on that. You may have heard about our work outside the watershed in the watershed, and just wanted to focus on what that enables us to do, and that enables us to defer a pretty sizable filtration project at Green Bay. So we took a look back at the capital investment that's been made at these two wastewater treatment facilities and the interceptor system. And historically, looking back to 74 to 2021, we've spent about $25 million per year in 2021 dollars, right? So we took that investment that occurred in the 70s, escalated that to today's dollars, and averaged that over that time as we did all those projects. That came to about 25 million. Looking forward, that looks to be about on par. We kind of say it's consistent with the historical investment. So at that same 2021 dollars, we're looking to need to continue to invest about that $20 million per year. So identifying what does that mean to the municipal customer? What does that mean to a homeowner? It's pretty complicated when we start talking about rates, because New Water has 5 rates. We bill our municipalities for flow, what's called BOD, TSS, nitrogen, and phosphorus. And so the ability to take a long-range planning, project and say, well, what does that mean for our future as a homeowner? It gets tough. So we have to make some pretty broad assumptions. But so we're starting with that basis of that 5.5% to 7% revenue increase. Residential and commercial growth will have the effect of reducing that impact on our customers, because you have more people to share those costs with, right? So that 0.75% each year that grows, that's more to share across those costs. And so it'll have an effect over the long term of holding those rate increases to less than that 5.5% to 7% as we project that forward. And then we do have capital reserves available. We've identified $30 million available to be able to offset costs to our customers by utilizing those financial reserves. We're evaluating how to use that. It'll continue to be evaluated over time. Does it make sense to do it now during inflation, periods of inflation, spend that cash early? Does it make more sense as interest rates go higher, to spend more cash at that time? So we're evaluating that. That will be less revenue that we need from our customers, and will also then help reduce that 5.5% to 7% revenue increase by utilizing reserves instead of seeking dollars through the rates. We're going to continue to monitor the availability of federal funding. There's been a lot of discussion around ARPA funds, the COVID money, whatever we want to sort of name that. New Water was not provided access to that. I believe that was a state, was that a legislature or a governor? Went to the governor in that case, and utilities like us, water utilities, wastewater utilities, weren't provided those funds. It went to the municipalities. Alloway was provided that funds. I know Alloway will look really hard at what's the best investment we need to make with those federal dollars. You may have heard of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the bill BIL. We are monitoring eligibility for principal forgiveness. So that's the possibility of not having to pay back as much of that loan for some of these projects. And that's that will be determined through the Clean Water Fund program, where we typically get our loans for construction done. Typically, New Water does not fall within the principal forgiveness level to be able to do that. We're seeing potential changes in that at the state level. So we're monitoring that. If we can get that principal for forgiveness, that would be great. That would be less funds then that we need to receive through our customers and through our rates. Slowly, we'll see through the mix of projects a slow shift away from that BOD and TSS parameters and more towards flow. That'll happen slowly over time. With our 2010 kind of the solids project, there was a shift away from flow and towards BOD and TSS, and these kinds of investments that we're looking at will kind of slowly shift that back towards where it used to be. That will take a fair amount of monitoring over a long period of time to see the impacts there. So how do we manage these rate impacts as we move forward? We'll continue to strategically, do financial planning. The focus will be on avoiding spikes. One big expensive project early on would kind of spike the rates. How do we prioritize these projects to kind of keep steady increases rather than having big kind of wild fluctuations in our revenues? We, of course, will use those capital reserves. We have that $30 million of reserves available for these projects. We will use those over time. We're monitoring those federal funding opportunities. And then, of course, each of these projects, each of our annual budgets are reviewed by our commission, put together by staff, and publicly bid these construction projects and be able to, as we implement the plan, learn more about each of these projects' financial impacts. With a focus on, kind of the criticality of each project, what needs to be done first, and how to mitigate that rate impact. We put some numbers. Again, it takes a fair amount of assumptions to try to come up with a typical household cost. Given that we invoice 15 municipalities, and then these municipalities then turn and pass those costs on along to the homeowner. Each municipality does it a little differently, but we've tried to take a look at that, and it comes to about $23 per month for new water services for a typical household. That does not include, for example, if you're a resident of Alloway's cost to convey wastewater from your house to New Water's pipes. There's costs for Alloway to maintain those sewers and make sure those are in operating conditions. That would be in addition to this $23 per month. So at that projected 5.5% to 7% annual revenue increase, this first increase in 2023, if it's about 5.5% to 7%, will be about $1.27 to $1.60 more per month. And then, of course, there's those annual increases on the following years. But we thought that this metric gave good context for the cost to a homeowner, and I think this checks out. I know I compared it to my own wastewater bill. I'm a resident of the city of De Pere, and that number is really pretty close, despite having my teenage daughter who really likes really long showers. There's a lot of water. So just wanted to provide that as some context to this cost. So again, sort of revisiting those expectations from our customers, from the residents that we serve, to be able to support the growth and economic vitality of our community. Our existing facilities can't meet those capacity needs. We talk about that peak wet weather. We talk about long-term growth of the community. If we get into the situation where we're in, permit non-compliance, that has the potential to limit that growth, not be able to expand our residential and industrial base. Protecting that health and public health and the environment, environmental health at 100% permit compliance, absolutely a driver for this planning project. Doing nothing, that long-term deferral of projects is not an option. These pieces of equipment have been operational a long time. We're growing. We're having more breakdowns than normal, and they take a long time to recover from. So certainly we need to make these investments. So next steps, we're here today with our second public information meeting. We're going to evaluate whether we want to do any further public information meetings like these. Eventually, we will get to let's get to three kind of key milestones on this. One will be a public hearing with our commission. That's likely to occur in June. that would be in front of our commission. Then it'd take public comment and an overview of the facility plan at that hearing. Commission adoption of that facility plan. That's a formal action. They'll need to adopt that plan, and then DNR approval. That'll take a number of months for them to review this plan, make sure it's consistent with the requirements set out in regulations, and see that we're approaching these projects in a well thought out way. So ongoing after that, certainly annual budgeting, annual capital improvement development that occurs each year, that will continue, and we have regular updates to our website on this topic around the facility plan. So I think we kind of made it through the formal piece, and I'm interested to hear what kind of input, what kind of questions you may have.